Hi Rajeshri. How are you doing? All right. So Rajeshri, I'm not sure how many people will be joining today, but yeah, maybe let's wait for a couple of more minutes to see if there's anyone else who's going to come.
Okay, madam. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how have you been finding NPTEL so far?
Yeah, it's your session is very good, madam. Actually, yesterday session that is it is not clear. Whatever he says now, that
Okay.
is not clear. Coming to you, it is very clear, informative, and interesting.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, Rajeshri, do you have any life science background or wildlife ecology background?
no, madam, I am an arts graduate
Oh, okay, nice.
and I am a retired person.
Okay, great.
Out for quest, I am the civil servant case 97 batch.
Okay,
Recently retired, and I am a spinster, and I would like to study because I don't know, so I pursue studies.
that's great. So, what got you interested in wildlife ecology?
Because just I became a VNHS member also.
Oh, okay, great.
And
Nice.
I was posted as a commissioner there in a Kudal Sangam, Basveshwar, Lord Basveshwar place.
Okay.
And there I have taken so many photographs of birds.
Oh, nice.
And around 100 photographs. Out of my this one hobby, I took it.
Okay.
And later on, I developed an interest to study about the birds.
Nice.
So I searched my internet and I got the NPTEL as a good source of knowledge.
Okay.
And I started pursuing it. And your session is very informative and very, I enjoy it.
Okay.
Because that, and though I am retired, I just would like to put myself to test whether I am still agile and this one.
Yeah, no, it's always, I think age doesn't matter when it comes to learning, and if you're interested in something, I think NPTEL is great to be able to provide this opportunity for anybody, anywhere to,
Yeah.
study whatever they'd like.
Because when completed my this one KS, during that time we study a lot, all the life sciences, everything. We study a lot now for
Right.
KS exam,
Right.
competitive exam that is.
Okay.
So from that day onwards, I have a passion for learning. During my this one job, I could not do it
Great.
because of job pressures and all. Now I find peace in understanding nature. It is like
Yeah.
a spiritual. It gives me a spiritual experience to know about lives on the earth.
Right, no, it's great, and I think the subject is also very vast and very wild. It just this particular course probably just covers a small like taste of everything, which is great. But if
Yeah.
you find any particular things in this itself that interest you, you can definitely take it forward, and I'm sure there will be other courses. And if in particular if you are interested in birds, there is NPTEL also offers a course in basic ornithology that
Yeah, I
happens.
did it, madam. I did it in elite class last year, this year only.
Oh, okay, okay, all right.
Last year also I attended your class
Okay.
because I had a little knowledge about that. So I didn't interact much during the sessions. I
Okay.
attended all the sessions and
Okay.
we were there taking the classes.
Okay.
Mm.
All
And
right.
it didn't because of that some inhibitions was there. So
Right.
I may be wrong this and that. This time I became a confident. I have been started reading the books
Good.
also
Yeah.
and visiting internet and I wanted to spend my time this one with creativity.
Okay, yeah, and I'm very happy that you are now actively interacting. I think it's very important, and the minute I think once you start interacting, then it's not a problem. You gain confidence about, even it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. It's about
Yeah.
just putting your thoughts forward. That's the
Yes,
whole thing.
your style of this one, that putting for the matters and all, it is very lively, madam. I'm not
Right.
out of this one appreciating. It is
Sure.
comes from my heart. Because yesterday,
Right.
I'm very blunt person. Yesterday's session, no, Monday, whatever that sir takes, now it
Right.
is not so much. I don't find any this one. It is not lively.
Right.
When comes to you and another one, Agrawal madam, she also takes.
Right.
Both sessions are very lively and I enjoy them.
Right. No, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And thanks for actively participating, because I feel, at least in my sessions, it's more of a discussion and it's more fun when people are discussing. So,
Yeah.
and I think today it's just going to be you and me. There does not seem to be anybody else, but let's start.
Okay,
I will.
madam. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So now there are several geological eras that you must have heard of, and we are currently in one particular era. So which era are we currently in? Are we in the Miocene? Are we in the Pliocene, the Anthropocene, or the Eocene? It's
I
something
think,
very.
madam, it is C option, Anthropocene.
The Anthropocene. And what do you think the Anthropocene even means? If you had to take a guess, what does it sound like?
Ecocene where there is a balanced growth, I think, sustainable growth and all.
Okay, so if we break down the word Anthropocene, what does it sound like? This prefix,
Anthropo means human beings,
correct?
and scene means, I think, a stage which is imaginary state, I think.
Right. So it is a period basically. The scene suffix
Yeah.
is a period, and anthropo, as you correctly said, means human. So now, if we are defining a period by humans, what does this actually mean? So, like for example, let's say about the Jurassic era. The Jurassic era was characterized by dinosaurs, right?
Yeah.
Because we always, whenever we hear Jurassic, we associate it with dinosaurs, correct? But
Yes, ma'am.
now, if you have Anthropocene, which is something denoted with humans, what do you feel Anthropocene could mean?
It is dominated by humans, where human population has been growing, and it is really exploiting the resources to greater extent without having any concern for the future generation. So that has to be regulated. Otherwise, the ecocene, what I think, where the balanced ecology will be
Eocene,
there.
Eocene. This is not Ecocene, it's Eocene,
Okay,
yeah.
Eocene, yeah. That may affect in the future. Anthropocene will lead to us to climate
Yeah, so
climate warming, climate change, huge climate change may affect the life on the earth,
correct.
and it also affects the biodiversity.
Right. So basically, we see that this Anthropocene period is something that is hugely driven by human impact, right? So this is an unofficial term that has been used currently, and it's not been formally adopted, but this is kind of just known as the Anthropocene era, where human activity is the one that has the most significant impact, and as you rightly said, a significant impact on the planet's climate and ecosystems, right? So this period is known as the Anthropocene, and when this particular period transitions to something else, where some other factor is the dominant factor probably, then this era will get done, and it will be, another era will start. Now that's going to be in the next how many million years, we have no idea, but currently, unofficially, we are believed to be in the Anthropocene. Just before the Anthropocene is the Holocene era, and there is no such fine demarcation between these two eras. So that's about the Anthropocene. And now, since I didn't even introduce myself as I should usually be doing, because it's only you. Okay, so I'm just gonna go over that. Welcome to week 9 of the Wildlife Ecology course by NPTEL. I'm Chiti, one of your course TAs, and today we'll be discussing something on human ecology. All right, Rajeshi, nice to see you.
Thank you.
So we are done with the Anthropocene. Now let us go to the next question, which is okay. So if you were to list out what are the possible impacts of humans on the environment, so now you can list out whatever you want. There's no right or wrong.
Habitat loss,
Right.
Pollution.
Right.
Even, madam, can we include in a pollution that electronic pollution, because we have been using so many electronic gadgets,
Sure.
and once, like a water, this light pollution,
Right.
that electronic pollution is also another aspect what I think we have been adding to the ecology.
Yeah. That can be added into something like waste generation.
Yeah.
Right.
Waste generation.
Yeah.
Okay. Then, because of our over exploitation of all energies,
Correct.
non-renewable energies,
Right.
that again speaks on our reduction in the natural resources, adding to CFC, We are adding
Right.
CH3 because of our this
Right. So
the
ozone layer
ozone
depletion.
pollution. Yeah.
Right.
And
Correct.
deforestation due to development process.
Right.
Many of the forests have been cutting off to build buildings.
Right.
So that is another one. Dam projects where uh, we are not bothered about the ecology.
Right. So basically, human development, human infrastructure development, anthropogenic effects. There's so many anthropogenic effects, right? There's so much of disturbance that is caused by a lot of human activities. Because of deforestation, this has led to a lot of carbon not being able to, get absorbed into one of the sinks. So the biggest sinks of carbon are oceans and forests, and a lot of things like ocean acidification is happening. Climate change is anyway rampant. There's a lot of erosion happening because um, since vegetation is lost, the vegetation that holds the soil together in one place is not being able to do so. So there is a lot of runoff. Then loss of biodiversity and extinctions that happens because, well, there are a number of factors. First of all, because of infrastructure development, a lot of green spaces are being converted into human inhabited spaces, and then you have not only biodiversity loss, but this also leads to wildlife conflict, and a lot of different factors can interplay into this. So humans are having a very, very strong role in the ecology of everything. So we say that humans are very you there is not much. You might have come across this term also that is known as carbon footprint, which is basically the impact that humans have on the environment, which is quantified in terms of this footprint. And basically we are trying to reduce emission levels or carbon emission levels by x amount in x amount of years, and for that there are several commissions also that come into play. And we have meetings by a lot of countries at a global level who come forward and discuss these strategies on how human impacts on the environment can be reduced. So let me just put the next slide. Okay, so here alongside we have a figure. You can take a minute to look at this figure. And what does this actually try to say?
Environment in the future.
So we have this is something to do with since we are let's take the example of India itself. We are a huge agrarian country. A large landmass of our country is involved in agriculture, and agriculture is able to sustain itself only because at such a large scale, only because of the application of pesticides, right? So where now we are looking at pesticide application on crops, and we are looking at it via the lens of the first generation of these insects and then the next generation of these insects. So
are they resistant to pesticide, madam, next generation?
Right. So how would you describe this graph? I mean this illustration, if you had to.
In the first stage, they reduced, their number is reduced. In second stage, again, they took another form and they became now resilient. They are resistant to the pesticide.
Right. So this, as you rightly said, this figure in a nutshell does describe pesticide resistance. And we have, where is my pointer? Alright, so we have here, if you see, there are a large number of white beetles along with a few red beetles. This is probably beetles of the same kind, but after pesticide has been applied on this, you see a large number of white beetles that have declined in number. That one red beetle still is able to sustain itself. Now in the next generation, because the red beetles are not getting affected by the pesticide, your resistant variety is increasing, and so also you have your white beetles also that are in equal number now. But after the pesticide is applied for the second time, you see only the white beetles are decreasing, but the red beetles still continue to survive. So this is a classic example of pesticide resistance. And what does this imply? Like, what implications does this have on the future of agriculture, for example? What do you think? Do you think this is a useful strategy or not really?
It is not useful strategy, madam, because in future again the pests are there. Again they will have to find another way to destroy them. Instead of that, if that is left to the nature, that birds and other this one, whatever natural checks are there, automatically it will be controlled.
Right. So this is basically not an effective strategy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, madam.
No, you were saying something?
This also affects the birds' health also, madam. If they eat these pesticide infected pesticides, beetles and all, their health and their this one again that their this one morphology also affected by this, I think.
Right. I think you're bringing up a very important point. Do you know what is the term of this called? Where you have some particular thing that. So now if we go back to our previous lectures, what does this link to? You mentioned bird eating an insect. So what is this a part of?
It is the trophy level.
Trophic level, correct. And
level.
Yeah, and what are the components of a trophic level interaction?
Part of the trophic level interaction. First, pyramid is there.
Okay, you have a pyramid, but what are the components of this trophic level?
Primary producers, secondary secondary consumers, tertiary consumers.
Correct. And these are all part of your food chain, right?
No, food chain, yeah.
Correct. So now
Yes, sir.
when you have your food chain and you have another organism consuming this, you mentioned something, right? It is affecting the next level in the food chain, and what does that lead to?
Again, that leads to a change in the population structure of all the levels of that whatever species are there, depending on each other.
Right. So
There will be a change in
Right.
their composition.
Right. So I can give you a hint. So if you have like a pesticide, that pesticide inside the body of the beetle does not get degraded, right? It does not get degraded or eliminated fast. So now if you have a bird that is consuming several infected beetles, pesticide sprayed beetles, what is happening to the bird?
Bird may survive or may not survive. If it survives, it will again develop a resistance to that pesticide,
Okay.
and that affects the next generation.
Right. So, okay.
Again.
So, if we take one beetle and one bird, or a beetle, the trophic level of beetles and the trophic level of birds, which trophic level will have more content of pesticide? Will it be the beetles or the birds?
Birds, I think, madam, because birds
Right.
eat a more number of a pesticide. This one, beetles.
Beetles, yeah. Correct. So, this term is actually called bioaccumulation, right? So, you have a toxic component that is ingested in stage 1, like let's say for example mercury poisoning in water, right? So when mercury poisoning happens in or heavy metal poisoning happens in water, they are first consumed by, like say for example snails or some bottom feeders. This is eaten by some fish, then that fish is eaten by bigger fish, and those bigger fish might be eaten by some bird, and ultimately at the level of the bird there is such high level of mercury poisoning that is happening. This mercury is said to bioaccumulate, So bioaccumulation happens across different stages of the food chain, and in the bird stage, which is the last and the final tertiary consumer, it has the highest levels of mercury ingested, and this can lead to, like, let's, if for example mercury, it leads to poisoning and ultimately death, right? So this is so if you see, the field of ecology is such that you can't separate things really. So even though we are studying human ecology as per se, we are linking it to all the stuff that we have studied before, right? Because all these things interact in some levels with each other, and we are able to formulate a picture of what is happening in the environment only because we have some knowledge of these different things that happen at various stages. So it's very important to know what is happening at the basic level stage first. So for example, if we did not do the chapter on food webs or food chain or trophic cascades, this particular thing would not make sense, right? Yeah. So as you rightly said, this particular strategy for applying one type of pesticide to kill particular beetles is not going to work, because there will be resistant varieties, and those resistant varieties will again have to be countered by some other pesticide. So nowadays what people use is, they use this multi targeted pesticide that doesn't target only one species but multiple different species, but in the bargain other beneficial species in our ecosystem are also getting harmed. So there might be like some useful things like butterflies and bees, right, which are not pests, but they play important ecosystem roles in pollination, etc., but they also tend to fall under this pesticide banner, and they are decreasing in numbers. So yes, natural pesticides are probably the best way to go forward with this. But the problem with natural pesticides is that it takes a lot of time to have a very wide impact like this. So that's where people want to produce large amount of crop and fast, and natural pesticides take more time to affect. So that's a little bit of a trade-off. All right. So we were briefly talking about how human population affects different stages. Here is a way in which human population has affected marine ecosystems. This is taken from one of the papers, and you can take some time to stare at the screen and the figures out here, and then we can discuss. Hi Nupur, feel free to jump into the conversation as well. So if we look at these graphs, if we look at the graph in the top, we see year that is explained on the x-axis, and it is the years that are being extrapolated into the future, right? It's extrapolated till 2100 out here. And then on the y-axis you have various different parameters. They are denoted by different colors. You have global mean sea level, then you have the sea ice area, then you have ocean heat content, sea surface temperature, and mean surface pH, right? And that is shown on a scale across these various different graph types. And then we also have CO2 levels, which is the 6th point out here in the red. So what seems very apparent as we move forward in time out here? What is increasing, what is decreasing? Just by looking at the graph. So let's start with global mean sea level, right? So if we start in the 1800s and go to the 2000, we see that this green line that you see out here, this whatever mint colored line, is increasing, right? So what does that mean?
Global marine wild fish harvest, that green
No.
line indicates.
No, global mean sea level. Sea
Okay.
level. And sea level is showing a trend, upward trend.
Okay.
So what does this really mean? If we follow this green line, what is this telling us?
Because of a global warming, the sea level is raising up.
Right. So sea level is rising, that we can all agree, right?
Okay, ma'am.
And sea level is rising because what is this? Ice. Ice is melting.
Yeah.
So because so if you look at the yellow line, they are all, it's like sharply declining out here, right? So because the sea levels because of global warming, all the ice that is usually concentrated in the poles is melting, and because this is happening, you are having a rise in sea levels, right? So a lot of low lying land masses and areas are getting submerged. So now, if we look at ocean heat, which is this orange line that is probably they started measuring it probably in the 1950s, you see that the ocean heat is increasing, right? There's a sharp increase in ocean heat. And if you look at sea surface temperature, which is the brown line, that is also sharply increasing. And then if you look at pH, you see that the blue line, the pH is sharply dropping here. So, can someone tell me what is pH? In any terms?
Water quality.
Yes, water quality, but measured in terms of how.
Acidic.
Correct, right? So when we have lower pH, is it acidic or basic?
If it is a lower pH, more acidic.
Correct. So lower pH means more acidic, higher pH means less acidic, more basic, right? So if you look at the pH curve, which is the blue line, it is sharply declining. That means ocean level acidification is
Increasing.
correct, right? And then if you look at the red line, which is carbon dioxide, which is basically PCO2, dissolved carbon dioxide, that is sharply increasing. So could you tell me what could possibly be the relationship between pH and carbon dioxide?
Increase in the carbon dioxide leads to decrease in the oxygen content, I think.
Right. So dissolved oxygen is definitely decreasing. Dissolved carbon dioxide is increasing. And what happens when carbon dioxide gets dissolved in water?
Water becomes a hard and not potable, I think. It is not user friendly, I mean, which is not helpful for the growth of
Organisms,
species.
right?
Yeah,
So
organisms.
so you have, when carbon dioxide is dissolved in water, it results in the formation of carbonic acid, right? And this carbonic acid levels, they increase in the ocean and they lead to ocean acidification. So when we talk about the marine ecosystem and ocean acidification, what is the most common example you have heard of in terms of acidification in the ocean?
Coral bleaching.
Correct, right? Coral bleaching. And what really is happening in coral bleaching?
The calcium from the shells and
Right,
it's dissolving.
right. So basically, what gives coral their color? Any idea? So, Nupur, you correctly mentioned like they are composed of the skeletons of corals are composed of calcium carbonate. But calcium carbonate is white. So, what really gives it this color? These bright colors that we see when we watch any wildlife videos on TV. Any idea? What could it be? So have you heard that corals actually get their color because of the presence of algae, right? And this algae has color or it's colorless?
It has a color, madam, blue and green.
Right.
Green.
Yeah, so algae has a lot of colors, different colors depending on whatever microorganisms are interacting with it. So, corals actually hold algae in it, and these algae are the ones that flourish in these corals, which give it the color, right? But the minute the water starts getting acidified, these corals they expel algae from their structures, and this leads to bleaching. So ultimately when we talk about coral bleaching, this is what is happening. The algae is getting lost from the corals and they are all turning white, and you will see this acidification happening in waves. It will start in a particular zone and then it will start releasing this algae, and they will all start turning white. And then, I mean, first not straight away white, but they'll all start losing color and ultimately turning white. And why are coral systems so important? It is because they also harbor like so many other marine organisms, right? There are a lot of invertebrates, there are a lot of fishes. They form a huge ecosystem that is specific to this coral kind of habitat. So, coral bleaching is one of the hugest side effects of ocean acidification. And if we see the graph below out here, we find year that is going again increasing across the x-axis, and then you have relative change. So if we see this, everything is increasing, right? The world population, which is shown by the black line, is increasing. US coastal population is increasing, nitrogen fixation increasing, marine biological invasions increasing, harvesting, seagrass loss. Okay, this is probably an inverse. Higher loss is happening. A lot of coral cover is getting lost, mangroves are getting lost, hypoxic zones are getting increased. Any idea what are hypoxic zones? What does it sound like? Hypoxia.
Deficient in oxygen.
Correct, right? So deficiency in oxygen leading to what kind of conditions? You have aerobic conditions, and then you have what are
Anaerobic.
Anaerobic conditions, right? So when you have an hypoxic environment, you have a much low percentage of oxygen content in either the atmosphere or in the form of dissolved oxygen in the oceans. So as you can see, if we even projected, so current levels, if we see in this graph till here, this it's a little bit pink shaded. All the dotted lines are projections. We are very soon going to reach the point where it's probably the point of no return, where your carbon dioxide levels dissolved in the ocean is going to absolutely exceed, leading to a huge drop in the pH levels. And I'm not sure after this what else is going to survive. So anyway, that paints a picture of what is happening in our marine environment. Okay, so now if we look at a heavy metal that is found abundantly in the soil after a nuclear fallout and possesses heart risks, as it is able to replace calcium in the body, is which particular uh, heavy metal are we talking about here? Is it plutonium, uranium, deuterium, or strontium?
Is it C, madam? Deuterium? No. That's some hard water. No.
You can all put in your guesses.
Calcium in the body.
I'm actually not entirely sure of this answer. I think it is one, but yeah, I will need to confirm it. Any other guesses? By Harsha or Nupur? No? It's there in your lecture.
Radium.
Which one? Uranium? So this is a heavy metal that is released only after there is a nuclear fallout. So it otherwise this is like the biggest cause for it to persist in our soil is a nuclear fallout.
I think it is A.
It's plutonium. Okay. Okay, so basically this is actually strontium, and strontium is something that is not found in the atmosphere or in the soil, but because of a nuclear fallout it gets generated and then settles down and gets incorporated in the soil. And one of the important points about strontium is that it's able to replace calcium in the formation of bones in our body. So because this particular element is radioactive, it what happens in the bones? What is formed in the bones? The bone contains
Calcium. And
sure, but there is something else very important in the body that is originating in the bones. Sorry?
potassium? No.
Potassium? No, we're not talking. We're not.
No.
Yeah. Not particular elements, but the bones, the inner walls of the bones have bone marrow, right? And this bone marrow generates has stem cell like properties, and it generates RBCs, etc., right? And cells are generated in the bone marrow, and because of strontium a radioactive substance present in the bone marrow, it kills off these generator cells and giving rise to a lot of cancerous cells, right? Okay, so Harsha says B cells, right? Yeah, so we don't need to get into details of all the cell lines, but yeah, as long as you have a rough idea of it. All right. So, dash of population theory is an exponential population growth and arithmetic food supply growth. What theory is this?
Malthusian.
Right. So this is a Malthusian theory where what can you tell me about the Malthusian theory?
Like according to Malthus,
Right.
the population grows in geometric
Progression, correct?
progression, and the food supply it grows in arithmetic progression.
Right. So what is actually happening?
So the population is growing at like 2 is to 4, then 8. I mean, and the food supply is like 1 by 2, 3, 4. It's like every the population rate of the population growth is more than the food supply,
Right.
availability of the food resources.
Right. So as you can see, as you rightly explained, Mupur, there is exponential growth in population, and food production is only having a linear or arithmetic growth, right? If you see this line, it is just a straight line. Of course, it is increasing. Food production is increasing, but it is not increasing at the rate at which it can sustain this exploding population level, right? So here at a point where you have the population exceeding the production of food, you have this concept known as a Malthusian catastrophe that happens, right? And well, it's probably already occurred, but it's important to keep a note of what our consumption levels are, why these are consumption levels, and also how we can how we are able to generate food in such a way and in such a quantity that it can sustain human population levels, mostly human population levels at this point of time, and also put into ways checks and measures where human population can, you know, not increase exponentially like this. Like, of course, now there are a lot of awareness drives that are being going around, you know, talking about population explosion, how it is harming the environment, etc., and what kind of ways. So this is a two-pronged way. We have to increase the production food, and population needs to go down. But just eliminating population is not a solution, right? It has to be done in a systematic manner where you all must have might remember those demographic curves that we did in the previous class. We had these exponential growing populations where the young population is much higher. Actually, let me see if I have the graph of that from the previous class. Let me just try and bring this up for you all. Okay, here it is. Not that far away. So if you remember these curves, we can see population explosion is happening in which graph? Is it A, B, C, or D? Do you remember these graphs? We did this. A rapidly growing population is denoted by which graph? Rapidly growing population and aging population. These are two opposite trends, right? No? Yes? Are they the same? Does anyone remember these graphs? You can say no also. Did I lose everyone? Hello? Am I audible? Am I not audible? Can someone tell me? Okay. D. Okay. Harsha, so which is D? Is it aging population or expanding population? Aging population. All right. Yeah, you are correct. And what looks like a rapidly growing population? Okay, B is a growing population, but which is a rapidly growing population? If we talk about birth rate, death rate, no. No. Everyone is giving all the answers. So let's go back to what Harsha replied. Harsha said that D is an aging population, which is correct, where you have the this part of the population, which is, so you have age, right? You have age on the y-axis and you have a number of individuals, males and females, on the x-axis, right? So you have 0 to 25 much lesser and 65 to 100 much larger, and 25 to 65 is even more large. So this is an aging population where your elderly population is much larger than your birth rate or young individuals in the population. But if you take into account, look at A and B, they are growing populations, correct? Where you have a higher number of individuals that are younger than older. But if you look at A as compared to B, A is a much higher growing population, as the area covered by the number of younger individuals is much higher than the area covered by the aging individuals, right? So this is an exponentially exploding population at the moment, A. I hope this is clear. I am going to, oh, that was actually a part of, okay, I get what I did. I went ahead. Alright, let's go to the slide. So which of the following are criticisms to the Malthusian theory, and which of the following criticisms is false? Affluence of the society is included in the theory of population growth. Food yield is not arithmetic but is exponential instead. Area under agricultural land has increased exponentially. Technological developments has resulted in the exponential agricultural growth. Which of this statement is false? Okay. BA. A. Okay. So we're looking at criticisms, and we're looking at criticisms that are false, right? So it's actually B, which is the correct answer, because A is actually affluence of the society is included in the theory of population growth. Am I messing this up? I don't think it is included, right? So A is your correct answer. Food yield is not arithmetic but is exponential instead. That is true. Area under the no, wait, actually affluence of the society is not included in the theory of population growth, right? So that is the false answer. Yeah, food yield is not arithmetic but actually exponential. Area under the agricultural land has increased exponentially, and technological developments have resulted in the exponential agricultural growth, right? So that is something that has actually not been accounted for in the Malthusian theory. All right, so let's watch this video and see what this actually means. Right. So this is something that has been happening in the world right now. Can somebody give an explanation as to what is actually happening here? Any idea?
And they sea turtles when they hatch, they definitely go into the ocean back,
Right.
the baby. And because of the distracting lights, they are attracted towards the light.
Right.
So instead of following the sea, they are distracted somewhere else.
Right. So what is a natural light that they usually follow?
The moonlight.
Correct. And now instead of moonlight, there is the fact of light pollution, right? So you have artificial light that is affecting the behavior of these animals. So what are the possible solutions that should be implemented?
So during the hatching period, the other light should be totally off.
Right. Has anybody heard of sea turtle hatching in India?
And the olive ridley turtles.
Right. And where is this happening? Where does this happen?
They happen in coastal regions of Maharashtra and only the Vedas Bandar, Vedas and near Guhagar.
Right. Yeah, so we have it actually on the west coast, the places where you mentioned, and we also have it on the east coast, right? So we have in Orissa, we have Rishikulya and those other regions where these olive ridley turtles, they have these mass nesting that happens, right? Have you been to any of these sites?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So, what they do is when these, even I have not been to any of these sites in person, but what I know is they protect these eggs that are laid in like huge numbers, and so that they are not depredated or harmed by any of the effects of whatever anthropogenic effects are happening near the beach. And at the time of hatching, they are protected and made sure that all these hatchlings get released or find their way basically into the ocean. And a way of avoiding light pollution is to completely turn off the lights near the beachfront during this nesting season, as you correctly also described earlier. This is a way in which we can ensure that sea turtle hatchlings make their way successfully towards the ocean where they're supposed to go. All right, next. Right. So you have world population growth, which is shown out here. We also covered this in the previous slide. Can someone explain to me what is indicated on this slide? Anybody, whatever is given on the slide. Anybody? Nobody? Anyone has heard of IPAT? What does it look like? What are we talking about here? Hmm. Yes, world human population has been increasing. And because of that, what is happening? With the advancement of technology and living standards in the country, there is a high rate of growth. Yeah. So basically, we are trying to measure human impact here, yeah. And human impact is affected by population explosion, which is shown in the graph out here. And it's not just population explosion. The amount of impact exponentially increases when you have access to technology, right? Because technology can, if you think of any situation with technology and without technology, your with technology situation is going to have a much stronger deleterious impact, right? So let's say, for example, um, drawing water, right? Drawing water in a rural setup, you are using a hand pump. You are using manual effort to pump up the water from the ground, right? But if you go onto a city, nobody is using hand pumps and drawing out water, right? They are all using mechanized implements and pumps. They just need to turn on a switch, and you have your water flowing from your taps, right? Because it's stored in a tank that is above. How does the water reach the tank above? It is being pumped up, right? What is another very very common thing that you see in, if you compare an urban versus a non-urban setup in terms of access to technology? What has this enabled? Give me some examples. Think of how life used to be around you 10 to 15 years ago versus how it is now. Think about accessibility. Is there something that is particularly striking to you? Right, okay. Availability of modern medical services. This was not available earlier, right? We have access to doctors by just reaching on the internet. We can chat with doctors, we can get prescriptions, medicines, etc. Anything, right? What else? Something that I'm sure all of you use that wasn't really at all common before. If we look, what is it now, 2023, if we look at the early 2000s, something that, yeah, sure, definitely smartphones. And smartphones have generated a lot of waste, right? I'm okay. So yes, you're correct. And something in smartphones, something that is linked to accessibility because of technology in your smartphones. And another hint is accessibility to resources. Okay, I'll give you another hint. 10 to 15 years ago, how did you do a bulk? I'm not sure what is the age category of people out here, but 10 to 15 years ago, what was your usual mode of buying groceries? How did you get groceries? If you're still doing it the same way, it's great, but yeah. Does this give you a hint? Groceries are basic, you're shopping. How did you do it then, and how do you do it now? Correct, right? Online shopping, online platforms like your Amazon, Flipkart, whatever, Zomato, Swiggy, everything, right? Any kind of service is available on your phone. You don't have to move at all. And what does all this online shopping come in the form of? How do they come to you? What is involved in this? From you placing an order for something somewhere, the service, yeah, it comes right to your doorstep, but it comes communication. Anupura is saying communication has become more efficient. Okay, what I was trying to hit at is the amount of waste that is generated, right? Online shopping comes with a lot of waste. If you go to the roadside vendors and buy your produce, you take your bags, right, with you. But if you do online shopping, what do you get? Tons of bags, tons of packaging, tons of cardboard, tons of waste. The amount of waste that is generated by online shopping is huge. I'm sure all of you must have received an Amazon or Flipkart package, which is something that is probably like the size of this in a huge box, right? So this is what affluence has given us accessibility to. Technology has given us accessibility to. Now we all can just shop online for anything. We don't need to move. This leads to a huge carbon footprint, right? From you going just to a vegetable vendor outside to your shop or a grocery supermarket outside your shop to buy groceries versus the amount of fuel that has been spent to get your grocery to you is, it's like, I don't know, there is no ways to compare it. To get your groceries outside in the shop, what do? Walk down from your house, go there, buy the grocery, come back. But to get your grocery online, it has been flown from one place to another. It's probably gone by train, it's gone by car. Number of people have been involved in transporting that from one hub to another hub, and then it reaches your doorstep. So the footprint that you are generating via this mean is huge, right? All right. Let me, I hope this is clear. Does this make sense? Okay, I'm just going to move on. We already discussed this. So here we are looking at, this is just a simple example of corn yield in the United States of America over the years, which shows a very stark increase in the yield quantities, right? This is just a diagrammatic representation. There's something that happened in the year 2012. You can probably look up online and see why this happened. Either it could be due to some catastrophe or due to some disease invasion or something like that. So this is the amount of food that we need to generate to sustain a country, and the North America is one of the highest generators of waste because they have a lot of food, people eat a lot, and still a lot is wasted, right? It's just a downstream effect. How is the world's land used so far, right? So this is a diagrammatic representation of the world, and these areas are shaded only by area. It is not that this particular area is responsible only for crops are generated only in this area. It is just a color demarcation according to the world map. So what this is trying to highlight is a huge percentage of land cover is involved in the generation of livestock, right? And livestock forms a bulk of the food that is consumed by people of the world on the whole. Then you have forests that cover about 26% of your landmass, and you have cropland that covers 7%. Then you have freshwater sources, which are 1%. You have barren land, which is a huge component, which is non-agrarian. Then you have shrubs that are about 8%, glaciers that are about 10% here and 10% here, right? But basically it's trying to say that a large percentage of land cover is being used for production of livestock that are involved in the production of meat as well as dairy products. So all your farming, everything falls in this category, and the amount of waste generated by animals is also extremely high. Most of you know that the largest source of methane in the atmosphere is due to livestock, right? Then again, you have global land use for food production, that is illustrated out here. We have 71% of the ocean out here, and then you have 29% of land. Out of this, oops, it's stuck. Out of this 29% of land, 71% is habitable land. Out of the habitable land, 50% is agriculture, right? So half of habitable land is agriculture, the rest 40% is forest, and then you have some shrubs, freshwater, and urban built up land. Do you see the amount of freshwater that is there? It's really very low. We are going to run out of resources to have fresh water in the world. Out of this 50% that is used in agriculture, about 77% is involved in meat and dairy products, right? And from that, if you're talking about calorie supply, 82% is derived from plant-based food, which is from this 23%, and 18% is from the livestock. And then you have protein percent, which is largely again plant-based food, and then the other is from meat and dairy products. Okay, so switching gears and talking about commissions currently. The report by the Dash developed the most widely used definition of sustainable development as development which meets the needs of the current generations without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. What is this particular body of organization that was involved in formulating this definition of sustainability? Any ideas? No? Okay, I'll give you a hint. It was known as a report. What report was this? Excuse me. No, not the UNEP report. It was a report that came during one of these huge discussions. Okay, so it's basically known as the Brundtland report. Brundtland, Brundtland report. Okay, so this is something a little more relevant. What do you feel falls under social sustainability? What are the factors that drive social sustainability? There are 3 pillars of sustainability, right? Does anyone know what are the 3 pillars of sustainability? Okay, so you have environmental sustainability, you have economic sustainability, and you have social sustainability. So these are the 3 kinds of sustainabilities. What falls under social sustainability? Any idea what falls under social sustainability? What do you think falls under it? Protection of human health. Okay. Yeah, what else? Participatory management of resources. Yeah. Environmental justice. Oh, that's what Rajshri mentioned earlier. Environmental justice and empowerment of communities that are burdened by by pollution. Then protection of human health, education to all, participatory management of resources, education and awareness. Yeah, yeah. So also education about and awareness about sustainability is really important, because unless we have people passing on this information, this is not going to, you know, be explained in society, right? So some people or some communities are inherently very sustainable, but others and other sometimes you get ideas as to how to be sustainable, and you like something as simple as not using plastic bags, right? Carry your own bag wherever you're going shopping. Minimize the use of plastic waste, minimize the use of extra unnecessary packaging. Sometimes when you buy groceries also, most of the bags that you get are these single use plastic bags that say that they are recyclable, but actually it probably takes another 100 years for it to be recycled. So it's better to take your own bags or use brown paper bags if they have, which are biodegradable and that don't cause much of a carbon footprint. So good. So when we talk about the environmental impact assessment, what are we actually looking at? Um, it is a procedure that ensures the environmental implications of decisions are taken into account when there are evidences of environmental impact in the progress of an activity. It is a procedure that ensures the environmental implications of decisions are taken into account after the environmental agency grants a permit. It's a procedure that ensures environmental implications of decisions are taken into account before decisions are made, or it provides funding to projects to undertake their work. Which is the most suitable answer? C. Okay, Upur says C. Okay, so it's actually A. It's a procedure that ensures the environmental implications of decisions are taken into account when there are evidences of environmental impact in the progress of an activity. Right? All right. And if we look at the screening step of the AIA, what is the purpose of this? It is to assess the quality of a project design, to approve the project or not, to determine whether a full EIA is needed, or to suggest changes that need to be made to a project. Any idea? What is the screening step involved? What about others? Okay, so the actual answer is C. The screening step of the EIA actually determines whether you need a full or a partial EIA assessment that needs to be done. Alright, so this brings us to one of the last components of this thing. So, can we discuss a few clean technology strategies with some examples? Now, there are several clean strategies that you probably might be aware of. Could you list some out? Everybody can list out one or multiple. Solar power energy. Okay. What else? Wind energy, biofuels. Okay. What else? What else? Think of something in your home. Recycling plastics and electronic waste. Yes, that's correct, right? You waste segregation, waste recycling. That's a huge component that is at least. So I have lived in several cities all over the country, and I feel like in certain cities they take this very seriously, and waste segregated at the source is actually designated, and one goes into the organic waste that is composted, and the other goes into recycling. But most often we have waste segregation that happens in the house, but ultimately it goes all outside mixed, and then ultimately gets parked in a landfill. If I know a large percentage of people stay in flats, but if you are you can also do this in flats as well as homes. You can start composting yourself. They have these earthen mudkas where you can layer your food and organic waste, and ensure that they are responsible in degrading the organic waste, and that can be used as manure or new soil for any kind of potting that you do, or planting any trees, not trees, plants. Yeah. So yeah, electronic waste is another huge problem. There are very few electronic waste collection sites. Hydrogen fuels, yes, they are very clean, but what is something that uh, you have seen that houses are using, like your general houses before? What kind of energy consuming devices were used, and what more efficient devices are now more prevalent? So LED lights, right? Because before we had tube lights or like incandescent lights, right, which consume a huge amount of electricity, and they also fuse faster, right? The shelf life or the average life of these lights used to be much lesser. But now, because you have LED lights can have come at various luminescence levels, and they also last much longer than your incandescent light and tube lights. Now LED tube lights have replaced your halogen filled tube lights, right? So yeah, that brings us to an end of today's session. And yes, CNG fuel also much cleaner, much greener, being implemented in a lot of vehicles right now. Vehicles burn a lot of fossil fuels in the form of petroleum and diesel. Another technology that has come so far are also hybrid vehicles that use electric as well as petrol, and that's probably just going to transition into electric vehicles, which are already quite popular right now. All right. So yeah, I think that's it from my side for today. And if you have any queries or questions, feel free to ask me. And if there are no questions, let's meet next week. Alright, so thanks everyone for joining, and catch you all next week for week 10. We are reaching the end. So week 10 and 11 will be sessions covered by lectures, and week 12 the tutorial is going to be a revision. Alright, thank you all for participating today, and see you next week.